So I want to thank everyone who has joined us here today. My name is Patrick Chase, co-founder of Empire Space. Very glad to have all of you here today. There was a lot of enthusiasm for this event. So I'm very excited about the presentation we have here. We hope that it's instructive to a wide range of stakeholders who are interested in New York space economy and where it's going in the future. So I have a presentation here. I'm going to dive into some of the details about us as an organization, our findings about the New York space ecosystem, what space policy is, and where we go from here. So that's the structure for these slides. I will send out the full deck to everyone who RSVP'd, so you will have this to go through in the future. But we're going to do kind of an overview. We'll talk about what does space policy mean. We'll look at some peer state examples that we think are really instructive for New York. We'll look at some of the opportunities for space policy here in New York, and then we'll end with some action items, open discussion, and Q&A. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as I go along. If it makes sense and if I see them at the time, I'll take them then. If not, we can be as open-ended as we want at the end in terms of discussion. And then my email is right there. If anyone has any questions, wants a deeper consultation on some of these topics, how it's relevant for their office or their business, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Always happy to entertain those questions. It's just patrick@empirespace.org. So Empire Space and the New York space ecosystem. So who are we? Empire Space is a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been in operation now for about 4 years. We are the research and network hub of the New York space ecosystem. We try to understand all of its players, all of its different connections, so we can help it grow and help the state reap the benefits of participation in the 21st century space economy. So we host events, we connect stakeholders, we conduct research and analysis, and promote the sector and expand its capabilities in any way possible. The objective, simply stated, is to expand New York's role in the 21st century space economy, creating jobs and academic opportunities across the state. That's why we exist. And one of the key ways that we've done that is through our census. It's a database of all the different stakeholders in the state, planetariums, observatories, private companies, large, small, new, old, academic groups, K through 12 schools, college programs. So our census has more than 1,500 of these unique entries, which really demonstrates the volume and depth of New York's space ecosystem. And so that's the pool of people that we work with. We work to engage them, identify their opportunities, how can we help them grow? Identify their challenges, how can we program those so they then are removed and you are able to grow. We are also an affiliate member of the NASA New York Space Grant and the New York Consortium for Space Technology. We're very proud of those affiliations. So some highlights about the New York space ecosystem. So everyone kind of knows what it is that we're referring to. Our census includes more than 350 companies who in some way, shape, or form participate in the space economy through direct NASA contracts. They could be a part supplier for major aerospace firms. There's a number of different ways and specialties that New York companies participate in the space economy. And these companies collectively employ more than 70,000 New Yorkers. That's a significant economic impact, hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis in all 10 regions of the state. There are clusters that are more prominent than others, but this is not something that's geographically isolated to one corner of New York. Every region of the state has a unique flavor to the space economy that they have there. We also track more than 340 unique collegiate and university resources. These are degree programs, student organizations, facilities like research labs, or community engagement hubs like planetariums. Key strength areas, these are just a few, but medical research, optics, satellite data analysis, finance, obviously because of New York City and Wall Street. There's areas of specialty manufacturing in the aerospace sector on Long Island that New York also does quite well. And to speak again to the regional nature of this, there are prominent hubs across the state: Buffalo, Rochester, New York City, Southern Tier, Long Island, all have significant regional space economies. And so we have this graphic here because while there is a lot of good going on, we're one of the largest states in terms of direct NASA activity. We're 15th or 16th in terms of jobs and economic activity directly related to work with NASA. There are challenges that the system faces that are preventing job growth, academic expansion, and fixing these gaps, correcting these challenges is one of the core reasons that Empire Space exists. So the ecosystem, as we've discovered, tends to be fragmented. It'll be regional, it'll be sector specific, it'll be externally focused. So stakeholders aren't aware of their partners in close proximity who could help them with talent or testing or other kinds of capabilities. So they're not aware of the resources nearby, and therefore they're not taking advantage of them. That's capping their future growth. There are gaps in the academic to private sector pipeline. So companies aren't receiving the workers that they need in order to grow their enterprises, or colleges are graduating students who aren't able to find jobs here in New York, so they're leaving the state. And so that is a significant connection that we need to work on refining. New York City is it's an interesting dynamic because there's a tremendous amount of space finance that flows through institutions or vehicles in New York City. The vast majority of it goes right back out to facilities, companies, investments in other regions. So we need to increase connectivity between New York's financial sector and New York's private space sector so that they are more aware of each other, of the potential opportunities there. And then the state level focus on our own space economy is not as robust as it is in other peer states. And we're going to discuss that in a second. One thing that we do want to highlight, because we think it is critical in understanding the specific nature of some of these challenges, is our needs assessment. I'm not going to read through the entire slide here, but this is a comprehensive survey that we have given out to the private sector companies that we've identified to help us get better insight into the specific nature of their challenges. So workforce challenges. Okay, we know that most companies struggle with workforce, but where are you struggling? Is it technical? Is it trades? Is it more advanced degrees? What specialties are you finding difficulty recruiting? In terms of funding or finance, are you struggling with access to government resources or private sector resources? If you are, what stage? So there are all sorts of more granular questions that when we have the answers to those, and we're starting to get that data back now, it makes the programming recommendation or the solutions much more obvious. If you know that the space companies in New York need greater access to talent in 2-year technical degrees that focus on metalworking or radiation specialties, then you can go to the academic players in the state and say, hey, we have identified gaps and needs in private sector companies in the region. What do you think about helping us fill these gaps? So there's a number of different components to that. If you are a private company listening to this conversation and have not yet completed the needs assessment, please reach out to us. If you are another stakeholder, if you're a legislative office, or anyone else who's generally interested in learning more about the needs assessment, we're probably going to have our phase 2 analysis out sometime this summer. And again, please reach out to me directly, patrick@empirespace.org, if you have questions, are interested in participating, or are learning more about the insights from that analysis. So before we go any further, we should probably just really quickly define what space policy means for the point of this conversation. So it broadly refers to the local, state, federal laws, economic programs, and other enacted supports that foster economic growth and innovation of all corners of the space sector. That's what space policy means for the terms of this conversation. So looking at what other states have done, there really are a broad range of tools available for entities that are looking to be proactive in engaging a space policy for their particular jurisdiction. Support for the academic programs, K through 12, college level, finding ways to enhance those offerings with a space or aerospace impact. Support for startups and established companies from state level economic development programs. We know that that's been an issue for companies here in New York. We have lots of great incubators and startups, lots of great ideas will take root here in New York, but when companies look to grow and expand their operations, they're running into barriers. Other states have robust networks where they facilitate conversations between academia, nonprofits, the private sector, and government leaders. They have established well-attended forums that bring all the different components of a state's space ecosystem together, that fosters innovation, that fosters collaboration. States will invest in new research and development capabilities. Companies will come back and say, hey, we need access to X testing facilities, or we're going to have to go out of state. And then states will work robustly to connect companies to necessary supports outside of their jurisdiction, but just making sure that the individuals that are the job creators are connected with the existing resources that can help them grow. And so now we'll look at a handful of peer state examples that we think make the most sense in terms of illuminating what's happening here in New York. Obviously, the big three, California, Texas, and Florida, have lots going on in terms of their space economies and state level involvement. They're kind of in a class unto themselves, just because of the significant NASA presence, the crewed mission, the human mission presence. So we wanted to look at states that are a little bit more similar to New York in terms of the size of their space economy, the composition of their space economy, and then look at what state governments there are doing or other state level entities are doing to support the space and aerospace sector. So the first one we're going to look at is Virginia. They have an annual legislative reception. It includes over 700 attendees, facilitated by the Virginia Aviation Business Association. So this is another one of those broad forums where members from all sorts of corners of the space ecosystem come together, meet, discuss issues. There's also a caucus in the Virginia legislature that directly advocates for aviation and aerospace, demonstrating the prominence that it has in that body. And then the Virginia Economic Development Partnership is very aggressive about marketing their aerospace sector to out-of-state markets, enticing companies to set up offices, enticing innovators to come start their companies there. So it's a very kind of comprehensive and dedicated focus from the Economic Development Agency there in Virginia. And the sources are cited there below. They'll be included in the slide deck afterwards. The next one is Colorado. So the Colorado Space Business Roundtable is very active. Again, they maintain that legislative engagement. They bring the industry to legislative and government leaders so that they can increase that understanding, facilitate that conversation, address challenges from participation from a broad range of organizations. And then in Colorado, they have the unique distinction. The Colorado Space Coalition is actually officially headed by the Lieutenant Governor of Colorado. It just demonstrates the intensity and seniority of interest and official participation in growing the space ecosystem by the executive administration out there in Colorado. Maine is a really interesting one. Maine is a really helpful test case for dispelling some of the myths about New York. Maine has a much smaller space economy than New York, much smaller overall economy than New York. It doesn't have as broad a range of high wattage universities. It doesn't have Wall Street, but Maine has a spaceport. They have a spaceport complex. It's a series of advanced testing facilities that are, at some point in the next couple of years, they already have customers lined up who will conduct polar orbital launches from the coast of Maine. So it goes to showing what, northern states who may not think that they can participate in the space economy, Maine has invested. They have decided that this is a key economy for them moving forward, and they have been very dedicated and methodical in building out these resources for this growing ecosystem in their state. And then Maine Space 2030 speaks to another dimension, which is vision, which is that comprehensive. It's a little bit more elusive, but where do we want our state's space economy to be in the future? What are the specialty areas that we want to invest in? What are the facilities that we want to bring online to enable this growth? That kind of forward-thinking, comprehensive vision planning is very important for a state-level space economy to grow. And so Maine, despite its smaller size, really does punch above its weight when it comes to this investment strategy, the state government involvement, and the vision that they've put in place to make them a really much more prominent player, especially in the Northeast, when it comes to the space economy moving forward in the 21st century. And then the last one is Maryland. They have a broad and active aerospace alliance, and it paid off for them last year because the Maryland Aerospace Technology Commission was created by an act of the Maryland legislature in 2024 as part of the Department of Commerce, created to, quote, promote innovation in the fields of space exploration and commercial aerospace opportunities, including the integration of space, aeronautics, and aviation industries into the economy of the state. So this is now an official part of the Commerce Department for the state of Maryland. They recognized the existing impact, the prominence it has, the benefits that come from that more direct involvement and support, and it was validated by the legislature. So the big takeaways here, the lessons from these different examples that we think would be most relevant to New York. The first is that vision and comprehensive planning, understanding where our state space economy is and where we want it to be in the future. Because defining where we want it to grow into will help us inform the priorities we need to invest in now. And successful states have that vision. They invest in that plan. Size and location should not become these self-defeating mental barriers. Just because we're not a southern coastal state like Florida or Texas doesn't mean that we can't be a prominent hub in the space economy. That's just simply not the case. And it's something that has come up in New York-based conversations, and we just want to be sure that the example is out there. That's just not true. New York can be as prominent of a player in the space economy as it chooses to be. And then another key takeaway is the incorporation into the formal economic development structures. Every state has an economic development agency, and the states that are seeing comprehensive growth in their space economies are the ones where it's a formal part of their economic development strategy. They offer collective tools to the aerospace ecosystem. Here are the incentives, here are the resources to help you grow. They market their space and aerospace ecosystem to outside participants, to other states, to foreign countries. Here's why you want to come to Virginia or Colorado to do business in space or aerospace, which is just an absolutely critical function for enabling economic growth. Fourth would be the dedicated facilities, identifying capability caps and what investments are necessary to remove those barriers is a critical function that oftentimes only state government is able to fill. And then the fifth, last but not least, is the networking function. We really have found that in a lot of states that have these thriving ecosystems, it comes from that, the innovation economy, the collaboration, and a lot of that stems from networking, from the opportunity to bring these different stakeholders together in a common format on a recurring basis for them to discuss solutions to problems, to facilitate access to resources. So facilitating that kind of networking really is critical. And so I know that there was a question in the chat, and we're going to be getting to that in just 1 second, because now we are here to New York space policy opportunities. And so now it's time to look at, we already have this space economy here in New York. We know it's doing well, but faces some challenges. We've seen what other states can do. So now let's see what's going on here in New York. So history-wise, there have been investments. Empire State Development has invested in a number of space and aerospace companies over the years. usually on an average of one a year that we're able to find from public records, in a range of companies, in a range of different capacities. So that investment is there. Whether it's a comprehensive focus area, could probably be built out a little bit more, especially when compared to some of the other states in terms of how prominent they market their aerospace sector. But New York has been investing in aerospace. Genius New York is the world's largest accelerator for uncrewed aerial systems, drones, and robotics. There's a lot of space and aerospace adjacent companies that have come out of that network. And then to speak to the question that was asked in the chat, in 2017, there was a bill introduced by Assemblymember Clyde Vannell to form an expert panel to study the statewide space economy here in New York and make recommendations. It did not pass and become law in 2017, but it was reintroduced earlier this year by Assemblymember Vannell, alongside a now Senate companion bill from Senator James Skoufis. The numbers are highlighted there. The links will be included in the slide deck that will be going out after this. So the bill is back. It has been reintroduced. It is in the relevant committees, which speaks to a broader sense of new momentum and visibility that we have noted in other corners of New York space ecosystem in recent months. And this graphic here shows that there's actually a couple of different space-related bills that have been introduced so far this session. There's the Space Task Force bill, which if you're interested in reading the full bill, we would encourage you to look up the assembly number, check it up through the assembly website. You can read the full text of the bill. Again, the link will be in the slide deck. But it would establish a task force to study New York space ecosystem. Representatives from both chambers, both parties of the legislature, representatives from industry, from the governor's office, come together, study the space ecosystem, issue a report for future action items. That's the quick summary of what that bill would do. So in both the Assembly and in the Senate, both of those are in the relevant economic development committees. There has also been a bill introduced in Veterans Affairs that would include members of the Space Force and benefits available to other veterans and service members. That one was also sponsored by Senator Skoufis, was sponsored by Assemblymember Barrett in the Assembly. That is also still in committee. And then there is a bill related to light pollution that is currently sitting in the Assembly Environmental Conservation Committee, introduced by Assemblymember Rosenthal. So this is an uptick in space-related legislation compared to previous sessions. It again speaks to the momentum, the increase in visibility around space in New York. If you have questions or details about the legislation themselves, we would encourage you to reach out to the sponsoring office to read the bill itself on the Assembly or the Senate page, and then follow-up questions would be best directed to the offices themselves. And then another quick touch point would be on NASA resources for New York space companies. This is another active component of New York space economy, anywhere, depending on how you measure it, anywhere from 30 to 50% of New York space companies have some sort of formal, structured NASA contractual tie. So there's the NASA Office of Small Business Programs. The link is provided right there. Provides a range of administrative and other technical assistance to small businesses that are operating in the NASA universe, so to speak. There are supports from the New York Consortium for Space Technology and the NASA New York Space Grant. The links to those institutions are listed right there. It is unfortunate but necessary to note that there is significant budget uncertainty when it comes to federal resources, especially this early in the budget cycle. There are proposals left and right. No one really knows. So how the availability of these federal resources plays out may be something to monitor in the future. If nothing, it's even more of a signal for New York to find a way to step in and fill any potential gap that may come from a retraction in available federal resources for these companies. We also wanted to highlight in this section real quick, just a couple of quick points from our needs assessment that point to this dynamic of private company and legislative interaction. So you'll see the two graphics there with the summaries up top. High points, most companies report some level of struggle with state level regulations and compliance, which indicates that there is a need to resolve some of that barrier to allow them to focus on their core work. Most companies in our survey also reported little to no connectivity with their elected officials really at any level. But they also express a desire to increase that connectivity, which tells us that companies want to form these relationships but aren't sure how, or don't have the internal capacity to do so. So that's a little bit of what the data is telling us. There's another chart here. You can see the highlighted section represents what companies identify as the connection that would be among the most beneficial for their operations. And the second most selected option was legislative connections. So this demonstrates the desire among space companies in New York to facilitate these conversations, even if they're not able, for a couple of different reasons right now, to be able to do that. So it's a key area of focus moving forward. So there is a track record to work with. There have been investments in aerospace companies across the state. There is new legislative momentum that could be really decisive in how the economy continues to grow or not grow in the years ahead. The data shows that companies are eager for these legislative connections, but aren't entirely successful yet in formulating them. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next section, which is action items. And then the NASA resources. So there are NASA resources available for space companies in New York. Their future availability probably remains a little bit cloudier than it has been historically at the present moment in time, which may just be an even greater incentive for greater state level resources to ensure that this growth is able to take place. So now we're going to head into the final section. I know I've been talking straight for pretty much about half an hour. So I'm going to pose some kind of action items to a couple of different groups of people who we know are on the call. And then I would be happy, I know there's some questions in the chat. I'm going to comment on those when I get to them at the end. And then I'd be happy to take anything more from the audience as we go. So for space ecosystem stakeholders, so these are the private companies that may be on this call right now, or maybe watching it in the future after we post it on YouTube. A couple of recommendations. First, engage your local legislators. We've put at the top of the chat there's the find your assembly member, find your senator tool that literally just put in your address. It tells you who your member is. It takes you right to their website. There's a contact page. Reach out to them. It's important to take that step to introduce yourselves. If you have questions on how to do that in terms of navigating the census, reaching out to your legislators, please, again, reach out to me directly, especially if you are a smaller company. We've found that larger companies, branches of major international firms, have a government relations department. A lot of these struggles come from smaller companies, startups with 6, 8, 9 employees, all of whom are technical specialists focused on the core problem that the company was founded to solve, which is where they should be focused. But oftentimes those companies don't have someone on board who has a legislative connection focus or a government relations focus. And so these are the companies who we believe are most in need of these connections, of being able to ask someone in government, what programs are available for us to take advantage of? Here are my challenges. How can you help me solve them? These are the companies who are most in need of that connection, who are least able to form it. So if you are one of those companies, please reach out to us, Patrick at empirespace.org. You can also just email our general info at empirespace.org. Reach out and introduce yourselves. If you're a space company in New York, reach out to your state assembly member and your state senator and say, hi, here's who we are. We've been here for X number of years. We do, A, B, and C that are offering, innovative new ways to tackle this problem or to solve this need or to grow this market. In the space economy, we're very proud to operate here. Here are some of the things that we've done well. Here are some of the things that we're struggling with. Thank you very much for your time. How can you help us? That initial reach out and introduction from your end can be absolutely critical. And then be inquisitive. Ask about access to resources or programs that may benefit your organization or your company that you might not be currently aware of. There's a smorgasbord of local, regional, statewide economic development tools that can be difficult for companies to navigate. And your elected leaders can be really critical in helping identify what resources are there that you might not be aware of that can be beneficial to your organization. And once you've done those things, maintain. Once you've made that introduction and established that relationship, keep in touch. Invite them to events, pass along updates from your company. Hey, this just happened. It went really well. And just establish that connection and then keep it going over time. So when new challenges arrive, the relationship exists, you can immediately pivot to seeing what resources exist to help you solve it. So those are our recommendations for the private companies that may be watching this call. And then key questions we think are good for people to focus on in the future. So what are New York's key space strengths? Optics is one. My hometown of Rochester is huge in the optics arena. Medicine, there's a lot of really critical space medical research happening in the state. The Aerospace Medicine Biobank is located in Manhattan. Data analysis, there's a lot of fantastic companies doing great data analysis work. Satellite data that has all sorts of different implications. Finance, obviously, home to New York City. So what are New York's key space strengths? Because identifying those and investing in those is what forms that vision. New York Space 2030. A lot of that is going to be centered on identifying our strengths, amplifying them so that we become world leaders in these specialties. Another big question, how are we marketing ourselves? Right now, New York does not do much kind of comprehensive marketing of any kind to any other markets of our space and aerospace ecosystem. So how are we pitching ourselves to other regions, other companies who might be looking to open a new facility? How are we perceived? How are we explaining ourselves to these potential partners? Another major question is the academic pipeline. If companies can't receive the workers they need, it's going to cap their growth, and eventually they'll leave the state. That's just an underlying reality. So being responsive to those workforce needs, how can we better program to solve them is a really existential question for New York space economy. Another one that we've gotten multiple times is how can we lower costs and barriers to research and testing, especially for startups. Oftentimes they have an innovative new idea. They would like to be able to prove some things, to be able to accelerate their vision, but the research and testing facilities might not be there. If they are, they're too expensive. They can't access it. Either the vision fails or they relocate out of state to better access those resources. So finding ways to reduce those barriers specifically around research and testing is really critically important. And then the final question is the incentives. What incentives exist for a company to either relocate their operations here? And we're aware of companies that have relocated their operations here. But how can we provide these incentives for companies who are looking to open, say, a second facility? How do we make New York a place that they want to consider? Is it proximity to academic resources? Is it proximity to financial resources? Is it proximity to new testing capabilities? That's a question of what are we putting on the table to make us an attractive market? So that is the end of our formal presentation. We would like to encourage any of the legislative offices who are on here to be mindful of the space ecosystem in your district. We break things down district by district in our census. So if you are from a legislative office, we encourage you to become familiar with the space assets in your district. What are the companies who are working there? Who are they employing? What are the academic institutions? What are their needs? If you have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to us directly, patrick@empirespace.org. So with that, it is the end of our formal presentation. I'm going to leave this slide up here for a second, and then I'm going to sort through a couple of questions from the chat. Mason had asked about plans offered up by the legislature. Again, we would encourage folks to check out and reach out directly to the members who have sponsored. Here's the bill numbers again. Reach out to those offices directly. Go to their website. Find the contact page, shoot them an email, and just say, I would like to learn more about this bill. Steve Wood, thank you again for joining us. Clean room space for semiconductors. There's a lot of those other, not directly space related, but industry or manufacturing related that could serve some of those same purposes. So finding what those adjacencies are, new Micron facility coming to Syracuse, IBM facility in the mid-Hudson. There are a lot of adjacent or similar types of facilities. So finding where those resources are and how space companies may be able to access them is significant. And then Greg had asked about investments into workforce development. It's on everyone's mind. There is not at this time a specific structure for workforce development. There's a lot of different parties who are talking about it. It's one of our priorities moving forward. Job fair, job board, finding ways to fine tune that academic pipeline. A lot of that will be informed by our needs assessment when we finish processing that data as we head into the summer. And the companies themselves will have told us what they need from academia, and then we can take that information back to academia and start that virtuous cycle of data gathering, information processed into solutions and feedback, and really start to bring those networks together. So some more thank yous, some more links again from Steve Wood. Thank you, Dan Lemire, for putting his information out there from Congressman Morelli's office. Very interesting. Regional space hubs. Big fan of regional space hubs here. Any other questions from anyone who's on the call, or anyone want to put anything in the chat? I'm happy to stick around any longer if anyone has any questions or final thoughts before we wrap up for the day. All right, well, seeing no further questions, of course, happy to present. Thank you, Greg. I'm going to put my email one final time in the chat, just patrick@empirespace.org. Again, if anyone needs a consultation, if you're from a legislative office, from a company, you're curious about some of this data, you want to know how it applies to your office, please reach out to us. We are happy to have these discussions. This video will be posted on YouTube in the next couple of days. Thank you again to everyone who joined and participated. Thank you to those who sent questions ahead of time. We tried to incorporate those in the presentation, so hopefully they were answered. And again, we're very excited about the future of space here in the state of New York, and we think the state is really well positioned to grow the size and impact and return on investment of New York's space economy and deliver a lot of really systemic benefits to the state moving forward. So thank you all very much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you. Be well and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.